Good morning. How are you? Good. That's good. We've been hearing from people all over the country since last night and this morning. Seems like people have a spring in their step because the president was held accountable for his reckless behavior. No one is above the law, and the Constitution is the supreme law of the land. No one is above the law, and the president has been held accountable. It really is interesting to see the response that we are getting, bipartisan, across party lines. I myself want to say I have a spring in my step because of the moral courage of our caucus. To see them all, so many of 100 members, go to the floor, that's all that we had time for, to go to the floor and speak about our Constitution, about the facts of the case, so clearly, so patriotically, so prayerfully, and so solemnly, but so definitely. Just to get this off the table right away, we impeached the president immediately. Everybody was on to the next thing. The next thing for us will be when we see the process that is set forth in the Senate, then we'll know the number of managers that we may have to go forward and who we would choose. That's what I said last night. That's what I'm saying now. The precedent for this, and I met with my 6 chairs after some of us were together for a press conference after the votes last night, and we discussed the precedent of it all, and that is in the most recent case taking up an impeachment, there was a proposal on the floor put together in a bipartisan way. 100 senators voted for the process on how they would go forward on the case of President Clinton. We would hope that they could come to some conclusion like that. But in any event, we're ready. When we see what they have, we'll know who and how many we will send over. That's all I'm going to say about that now. We've had a very eventful week. I'm so proud of our members and really in some cases the bipartisanship of some of this and some not. Last year's campaign we said for the people we would lower the cost of health care, starting with lowering the cost of prescription drugs and preserving the pre-existing condition benefit. Within the past week we passed the Elijah Cummings Lower Drug Costs Now Act, which does just that. As we were passing it last week, we discussed the particulars of it. But with the savings that we gained from that, I think it's important to note that we already said we would be spending the hundreds of billions of dollars in savings on expanding benefits for Medicare, dental, visual, hearing, and the biggest expansion of Medicare since its inception. Next, we did lower important bipartisan bill, the appropriations bill, to keep government open and to do so early enough so that you knew to make your weekend plans and get started for all the holidays you may be observing. And that was a major accomplishment. It took constant back and forth, but we ended up, as I have always said, as an appropriator myself, one forged in that culture. Left to their own devices, the appropriators can get the job done. And I salute Chairwoman Nita Lowey for her work, the ranking member as well. And we're very pleased with that legislation. I guess they'll take up cloture or something on the Senate pretty soon, and hopefully it will be on its way to the president for a signature. Before I leave the subject of impeachment, though, let me commend our 6th chairman, Adam Schiff, Jerry Nadler, Chair of Judiciary, so proud of him, Maxine Waters, Financial Services, Richie Neal, Ways and Means Committee, Elliot Engel, the Foreign Affairs Committee, and also a very important committee chaired now by Carolyn Maloney, the Gov Reform Committee. I said last night and I say today, while he isn't with us today physically here, Elijah Cummings is with us in spirit. The foundation he helped lay for justice is with us. And he said, when we're dancing with the angels, what we know about what we did to keep the Constitution intact. when he said that, it was very prescient. Little did we know that by the time we passed the impeachment resolution, well, the articles of impeachment, that he would be dancing with the angels. Right now, as we speak, they're debating on the floor the U.S., Mexico, Canada trade agreement. I hear my colleagues on the floor last night saying, well, if we weren't doing this, we could do Mexico. Well, we are doing Mexico. And the discussion that took some time to convince the administration and the other countries was that we weren't going forward until we had the strongest possible enforcement of the trade agreement, and also manifested in the legislation that we'll have on the floor today, the implementing legislation. As you've heard me say over and over again, this is about enforcement, the overarching issue. If you can enforce it, it doesn't matter what you put forth. And of the concerns that we had, one were workers' rights, the other pharmaceuticals, and the other the environment. And we made giant progress from, first of all, over the existing NAFTA for sure. But apart from that, big distance between what the administration was proposing to begin with in all of those areas and to where we ended up now going forward. I'm very pleased to have the statement today that went out from the AFL-CIO, from Richard Trumka. He said, we are proud. He said, there is no denying that the trade rules in America will now be fair. Working people have created a new standard for future trade negotiations. I think it's a template for future trade agreements. Some of my members think, let's not give it that much. Look, we'll see how it goes in the implementation. That means everything. Then after that, today, we will do SALT, and that is going to be the state and local tax that the Republicans put on to punish blue states largely. It is paid for, this legislation, to repeal the SALT tax, and it will be paid for by increasing the rate on wealthiest individuals in our country. When the president first proposed his tax scam, they were saying, we're never going to lower the individual rate. And then they did. And now we will raise it again to repeal the SALT. So we're very proud of what we have done. As you know, the Republicans keep saying, well, we should be working. You know, we've sent over 400 bills, 275 of them sitting on Mitch McConnell's desk. Well, 400, but 275 of those, at least, are bipartisan. The range of subjects is, well, you've heard me say it, but bears repeating, I think. That includes all of our top 10 pieces of legislation, bipartisan background checks, expanding background checks. People have to have a background check unless they buy it at a gun show, online, or in some kind of straw transaction. So this is not creating background checks. It is expanding them, and as well as the South Carolina, one is H.R. 8, the other 1112. 295 days ago, we sent those bills to Mitch McConnell, the Grim Reaper. I have news for him. He may think they're dead on arrival there, but they are alive and well in the general public. And every day that he does not take up that legislation, because he knows it will pass. He fears that it will pass, or else he'd take it up. Every day that he does not pass it, 100 people die. Not all of them would, by gun violence, not all of them would be saved by the legislation, but some. And so we urge him to take up that life-saving legislation. The list goes on. Paycheck fairness, equal pay for equal work, Violence Against Women Act, again, about women, the legislation to raise the minimum wage of the 30-some million, 32, 33 million people who will get a pay raise with the increase in the minimum wage. Over 20 million of them are women. The Equality Act and Discrimination Against the LGBTQ Community, Dream and Promise Act, the SAFE Act, Save Our Federal Elections Act, Butch-Lewis Act, Protecting Pensions for America's Workers, Farm Workforce Modernization Act, which we passed the other day. It was bipartisan support and has bipartisan support inside and outside the Congress. Again, lower drug costs now. One of the bill that we did pass that we had an enrollment ceremony, perhaps some of you came, was the Future Act, and that was about minority serving institutions, Hispanic serving institutions, historically black colleges and universities, higher education institutions that deal with our Native American population. It's very important. We sent it. That did pass, and that is on its way to the president. So with that, I said to my members what I say to you guys all the time: the word recreate and recreate are the same words. They spelled the same, and they mean something the same. When you recreate, renew, rest up, be with your family, you are recreated to come back for the discussions and the debates ahead as we go into the future. And as we go into the future, again, we are inspired by our founders who said, "E pluribus unum," from anyone, no matter what our difference is. And they certainly had theirs. We always have to remember that we are one country. I have my speaker's pin on today, but many times I have a flag pin which said, "One country, one destiny." We have to think in those terms, and we look forward to doing that as we go forward. We still have a day here as we go forward. So I wish you happy holidays, and whatever you are celebrating. In our house, we celebrate them all. Christmas, Hanukkah, Kwanzaa, New Year's, whatever else. But I hope you have it. Now I'll have time for a few questions. Nancy?
Do you run the risk, as some Republicans have said, of looking like you're playing games with impeachment if you hold on to these articles for too long?
I said what I was going to say, Nancy. When we bring the bill, which is, just so you know, there's a bill made in order by the Rules Committee that we can call up at any time in order to send it over to the Senate and to have the provisions in there to pay for the impeachment. And then the next step, whatever you want to call it, the trial. That is where you put the managers. I was not prepared to put the managers in that bill yet because we don't know the arena that we are in. Frankly, I don't care what the Republicans say. Any other questions? Not on this subject. I've said this is it. I understand.
Last night you suggested we need to see a fair process in the Senate.
But we'd like to see a fair process, but we'll see what they have, and we'll be ready for whatever it is.
Is that the requirement, or do we need to see a fair process before?
We would hope there would be a fair process, just as we hope that they would honor the Constitution. By the way, I saw some of it, I didn't see it, but I heard some of what Mitch McConnell said today, and it reminded me that our founders, and when they wrote the Constitution, they suspected that there could be a rogue president. I don't think they suspected that we could have a rogue president and a rogue leader in the Senate at the same time. Yes?
Speaker, to that end, you have talked to criticize Senator McConnell today.
Any other questions on anybody want to talk about Mexico Free Trade Agreement? Anybody care about that? Jobs for the American people, progress in addressing globalism and the issues. Anybody want to talk about the SALT tax that we're passing today? Important issues that relate to the economic vitality of our communities. Any other questions? Because I'm not going to answer any more questions on this. Clearly, do you understand? When we see what their process is, we will know who and how many we want to send over. Not until then. I'm not going to go there anymore. Yes, sir.
On USMCA, one expects the president will campaign how he got rid of the worst trade deal in history and made a better deal. Is that something you want to take credit for? Or will you let
Of course
him
we'll take credit for it because what he proposed did not fill the bill of what he just described. But there are those, and some of you who care about substance, have in the past asked about whether we would pass that because it would have what we call collateral benefit to the president. I don't care about that. But we had an opportunity to do something very important for the American people, for America's workers, and we could not let him stand in the way of that because he would go out and take credit. So this isn't about him. It's about American workers. It's about being good neighbors in our hemisphere. And frankly, we weren't going to go down that path until the administration conceded on many of the provisions that they had in the original proposal, which were not acceptable and which were not, as you described, the president would describe it. Yes, sir.
Have you had any conversations with Congressman Van Drew about maybe caucusing
None.
within the new year?
Zero.
Do you have any advice for the congressman?
No, I know, nothing. Zero. One more, that's it,
The
yeah.
president last night had some pretty harsh comments about your dear friend Debbie Daigle and her late husband. I wondering if you have any reaction.
Let us pray. Let us pray for the president. This is, the president clearly is insecure when it comes to statespersons, whether it was John McCain. Think of what he said about John McCain, and his supporters just overlooked that. John McCain. Now John Dingell. What the president misunderstands is that cruelty is not wit. Just because he gets a laugh for saying the cruel things that he says doesn't mean he's funny. It's not funny at all. It's very sad. Thank you all very much. Happy holidays to all.